For the people are destroyed by the day for a lack of knowledge, but they absolutely been destroyed for accepting beliefs. That's what has guaranteed their destruction. And the broken families that go with it. And the inability to solve problems or to cure anything in relationship to the attacks made upon us by the day by the foreign Europeans who have been pretending to be Americans and also claiming to be sovereign of the land under the Whiggamore Party's white title, adopted in 1853. Now, what other questions do you have on the site coming from the people, good brother?
No, I get you.
Yeah, I just wanted to drop that, but I want to cover bases because I want to show you that most of it is the mental state or the mental status of the people. Go ahead. Go ahead, sis.
I want to ask your thoughts on artificial intelligence, because you were talking about, us breaking the cycle and basically reaching, the next generation to make sure they're conscious.
Yeah.
And so what came to my mind was artificial intelligence and how they are, the one that made the citizen, and what are they really doing?
What they're doing, they're simply taking what they have been studying is the human species as a machine, and simply put it into mathematical equations, just like an electrical machine, and using the same principle that you do with the radio. See, because the human biological being is really a transducer, a transceiver. By the nature of this being, we actually receive and emit energy and information. From an engineering perspective, how do you mismanage, and control these biological machines that don't know, by virtue of adopting belief systems, not by nature, that have lost their connection with nature, that actually defends them, by teaching them belief systems, for one. And it's quite difficult, and I agree that it is, can share with them enough information that can be researchable by them on a more elementary basis. As an example, say you as a woman, a mother. Women, just look at women in general, right? If you study nature, governing principles in nature are fundamentally constructed on the matriarchal principle of nature herself. As an example, if you look at any life form from the animal kingdom, now you can get into the more minute amoebic forms, but more of your mammal species and other species of beings in the manifest form on Earth planet, and others too, but we mostly want to concentrate on Gaia, because this where we're presently in school. To understand the nature of government, study woman herself, because government is based on woman. If you want to attack a nation, which is what they do, you would disguise the attack on what they call Trojan horse type thing. As a matter of fact, that's why they call prophylactics Trojan, to kill the seed or to block the seed. And I'm setting these things up to explain reality to you. If you can teach people in the name of religion, how many men do you see pontificating across the stage, foaming and at the mouth, talking about Jesus and God and everything? And Eve came from Adam's rib and do a moonwalk, and everybody starts doing all this and giving them their lunch money. And that sucker got a belly button, the only proof of his origin. And yet these women keep on delivering their babies to that damn demon behind a pit, and ain't figured out yet he's a damn vampire. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? If we can get women past their egos and their fears and get enough information to them on how the dogma system has worked, that is really counterfeit religion, which is all they've ever been given, and get past their fake spirituality, which is emotionalism, that Rev told them is spirituality, it's just emotionalism, and to use their divine intelligence, they'd solve this thing pretty much overnight. Now, we as sons, and I'm not negating our responsibility as sons, because you gave us these bodies to build stuff. But for the most part, we pretty much stay boys quite some time. We're just talking truth. It's not ego. Let's talk truth. To the degree that we as sons have to sometimes put up fronts to be defensive with our women is because they've been contaminated and they will destroy us. So a lot of times the disengagement reflected in us as sons is really not sincere. It's to protect ourselves from you, who we prefer to love, but scared of, because in the contaminated mind, you destroy us all the time. But that's basically under the belief system. No.
Y'all got real loud. No, we today.
I'm being honest. I'm being honest. As a man, I'm being honest. Most men won't say what I'm saying, because their ego will be in front of this, because they got to prove this, and they got testicles, and they're more kind of protected of their marbles. So when you're honest, you can analyze things better. But people are have a tendency not to be as honest because they feel vulnerable. They don't want to be vulnerable. Because we've adopted the dynamic operations of Constantine under the disguise of Christianity, we've allowed the Trojan horse of Inquisition operations to enter into every aspect of our lives. And it is the women themselves who deliver us as sons to the preacher, because he says Jesus, because she believes him. She's already prepared to destroy her own family. Let's look at this. And I know a lot of men would not be as honest as I'm being about this. Most men who you see don't go to church as often as women do is because in their hearts they know that asshole's a con artist. But they'll go because their wives start getting simple if you don't go, because you don't know Jesus type thing, and we try to work that out some kind of way. Knowing it's bullshit. Not exactly how it is, but the spirit of it's bullshit. Jesus ain't got no bank account at Chase Manhattan. I don't care how many tithing you've been collecting. Now, when you do research, as an example, fact. The tithing system set up by Pope Sylvester II, which is actually a Roman tax, having nothing to do with the prophets, having nothing to do with Prophet Muhammad, Jesus, Buddha, any of the prophets, and yet it is interjected in the platforms called religion as if it came from God in heaven. And the masses believe that because the mothers keep delivering her sons to this man who's lying, provably lying, and we've evolved into a dead culture of fake spirituality that we've perpetrated on generations. Kid, as an example, if right now we had an ordinary unabridged dictionary as an example, and without argument that the majority of our people think that black is their identity, as an example. You as a mother, because mothers are usually more protective. It's not that fathers aren't. We're talking about how nature works. Mothers are more protective of their offspring by nature. Dad will get up there and fight and everything, but The most dangerous thing is a woman, and you messing with her offspring, whether you're dealing with lions, any other form of life. In the human family, it has been less so because of the adoption of the Constantinian mentality under the disguise of Christianity. Women have put down their guard of protecting their family and have given their mind to Rev in the name of Jesus, not knowing that it was mind control. Are we clear? Therefore, the ability for the vampires to come in and to destroy the families has been quite easy. If you, as an engineer, because when you look at engineering, whether you're dealing with sociology, language, mechanical engineering, chemistry, alchemy, etc., calendar keeping, etc., geography, anthropology, if you use the same fundamental logic of logistics and don't put a bias in your mind, basic reasoning of logistics can solve a lot of problems. However, most people don't approach things that way, and they're not trained to. Are we clear? If you train people, or I say re-educate people in basic logistical thinking, they will solve most of the problems by nature without ever having to go to school. But they don't believe in themselves anymore because they've adopted beliefs and called them spirituality, and therefore they feel blindly safe, and they're not. If you can get past that, and so it takes real thinkers to communicate with people who have egos to get beyond that. So most of them will not be savable. However, in your divine reasoning as a woman, you have the capacity to do that starting with the womb, the first school. So if you can get women conscious to a certain degree, they will begin the pattern by nature of saving humanity. But they must get rid of the priesthood. That's blunt. How many people you think would attack me for making that statement? A lot. So I'm telling you how easy the cure is, yet how difficult it is. Yet the power is in your hands, and always has been. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Well, question. So, what is the conversation that we're having? Because I know it's
this is almost like fireside chat. This is like open forum, and I'm more or less kind of feeling what's coming from the people. Meaning that I could talk a subject matter, right, and you could be interested. However, it's more interesting when you're just having an in-house conversation, the honest questions, because half of the things that I would go into, if I go into documentation, half of you already know. You would feel supported and affirmative, but a lot of questions are, put it this way, I feel it more important for people who got some of this information and don't really quite understand where we're going with this, who would ask questions but don't have the courage to ask questions because they don't want you to recognize their ignorance. But for the people who would ask questions, it's really asking questions for others who didn't have the courage to ask, or even making statements that require honest answers from people like myself or anyone else who stand up here running their damn mouths. That really address what's happening with us, like for real. Because it's often uncomfortable, and not speaking the party line, not telling you what you want to hear, causing you, and that's a plural you, including me, to actually have to start going within and questioning the positions that we've had or the positions that we hold. How valid is it, really? What has it done, really, to contribute to uplifting fallen humanity, for real? Not, emotional, and I said the Lord, and everybody said, oh, please, and, you ain't said nothing. What are you talking about, the Lords of London? You know, because that's who's been running this thing. You know, but the people think it's Lord's in heaven type thing. You understand what I'm saying to you? So to be honest on how, when you're interchanging with people who have the courage to really ask questions, it answers a lot of questions for people who don't have that courage. And this kind of is for that. It's for them. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Because essentially, to really to begin to, in some cases, and to work on maintaining and accelerating the liberation of humans on the planet, you're going to have to be coldly blunt with them and get them out of their naive thinking that's predicated on the misinformation that they have that they thought was education, which includes their so-called religious systems, which has never been religion. It's been dogma all the time, you know, and it's kind of uncomfortable for people, and I understand that. But if you're going to solve problems, you know, you got to tell your girl, you know, I mean, you're looking good and everything, but we can't go to prom with you wearing them Nike high-heel green sneaks, you know, with a tutu, you know, with a fur, and swear you got it going on, because it's not exactly, you ain't looking, I mean, let's not go to the prom tonight, let's go to the movies, you know. Oh, you don't want to go to prom, well, you know, you got to start being honest, you know what I mean, and start letting them know that boogie ain't a mole, you know, me wipe that boogie, oh, I thought it was a mole, you know, it was boogie. You know, we got to start being honest about ourselves, and it's kind of hard because our egos have been part of our training, and for generations we have been trained hypocrites. In other words, our hypocrisy in so many areas, both so-called religiously and culturally, have been groomed to this idea that we've polished these things up and put them on the shelves and called it spirituality and religion, and it's really a cover-up for our hypocrisy, and we've sold out generations in the name of hypocrisy, and we protect the hypocrisy because we've been a part of it rather than admit that we've been hypocrites and have been sacrificing our generations. Go ahead, sister.
How do you separate, what you say, emotionalism, right? That's what you were saying?
Meaning that if
From
you study,
spiritualism,
if you study us as a people, if you study us as a people, like let me back up. I digress. Let me back up. Any discipline that you, and that you is plural, and so when you said you, you're talking plural and we're talking plural. If you would teach the history and the disciplines themselves without bias, the people would have the answers to that question. However, people have been trained to accept belief systems as foundational knowledge. That's a training. You've got to get them past that. So, as an example, just like when we just talked about tithing as an example, the average person who doesn't really study will teach their children that tithing is a gift of honor from you to Jesus, God, Allah, Moses, Muhammad, in the charity of the Lord. For you supposed to give 10% of your sandwiches, type thing. But upon research, that has nothing to do with any of the prophets. That has to do with Roman tax. And that's researchable, right? However, can we agree? However, most people knowing that would defend their hypocrisy, and most people knowing that, including people who promote that, will not tell that to the congregation while they themselves really know that that's the origin. For instance, like a scholar, anybody who's a scholar knows that tithe, that word tithe, means and originates as 10% Roman tax. The same Romans that have been murdering all the prophets. And yet the masses who've been receiving the so-called instruction on tithing have been trained that that's an obligation to pay to the church for Jesus' bank account at Chase Manhattan. And send that idea to the next generation, which has become what is called black culture. And the daggone reverend been spending Jesus' head with Bertha, who sings with the choir every year down in the Bahamas. And they ain't caught on yet, but they be calling it spirituality. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Now, another point. Spirit is breath. Write that down. Spirituality is the Kabbalistic and historical training in meditation for breathing techniques. Are we clear? For preparing the body for meditation, for relaxation, for cleansing of the cells, and to activate the energies of the cells to pull Gnostic wisdom right from the air, called the Akashic record, meaning that to cleanse yourself, to actually reconnect or get that electrical charge actually from the atmosphere, or what you call spirit, what you would call spirit connecting. It is breathing. It is not the philosophies. It's not praying. It's not making salat. It's not all this stuff that we do in the name of religion. That's not spirituality. Spirituality is breathing techniques that should be taught to you in what you call disciplines of meditation and yoga that should be taught by all these priests, whether they're Muslim, Christians, or Jews, to help you connect to the Akashic records, the ethereal plane. That's a fact. They start jumping you around. I want to say this morning, I found a nickel. I was broke. I needed a sandwich. I was hungry. I was walking down the street. I saw dog poop. And I just moved out the way and tripped. And I almost bumped my head. But the Lord saved me from banging my head on the curb. And I saw a nickel. That proves there's a God. And I went and bought me a sandwich. And I was fed. And I was blessed. And everybody goes, damn. And they start going. And they start giving them their lunch money. He's full of shit, and so are they. I'm just being blunt. And they've been getting away with that stuff for generations. In truth, they don't believe that crap themselves. Because in truth, in secret, they're Masons. And they study the real history of the mathematics of the universe and the symbology of all of the crosses, the crescents, the stars, all of the symbols, the pyramids and everything, and they deal with it from a mathematical, scientific level, and the knowledge of the elements of the earth, and guide their lives accordingly, and prosper at the expense of the poor. That's why Jesus was disputing with these demons who were doctoring up the law. That's your damn priesthood. The same ones that murdered Jesus and all the prophets is the very people that's pumping belief systems today. That's their power base. Are we clear? But the people keep associating these demons with the God in heaven. And they calling it spirituality. They're out to lunch. They're under mind control. However, it's difficult to liberate them because they've been calling that spirituality and told that to their children. Their families are all broken up. The youth are dying younger and younger on the streets. They have no reference to civil principles. They got a spy center any 3 blocks in any direction in the poorest of neighborhoods. And the communities are trashed. But they saved in their mind, not in reality. If you can get them past their illusions of belief and start getting them to deal with reality, and particularly the mothers who keep delivering their children to these demons, they fix this thing overnight because you stop supporting these institutions and they will collapse. In the Bible, that's called the apostasy. That's what's taking place now. The people are finally waking up. They're kind of slow, but they're finally waking up. In other words, when you start dumping these institutions, pseudo-religious institutions that you, and we're talking in general, have accredited to the divine creator in heaven, when you start cutting that concept of that connection, this stuff, nature herself will come and start sweeping your house out. And the Akashic information will come to you just like the sunlight in the sky. This is referred to in the Bible when it says, just open your mouth and I'll speak for you. That's what that really references. Your reconnection to the Akashic record. By nature. Not by some belief system. Beliefs must be thrown in the trash. Emotionalism, throw it in the trash. Deal with knowledge. Give Sister a mic.
Can I ask one thing?
And that's all. Yeah, go ahead. And then after you heard.
Okay, I just wanted
Stay in the mic so everybody
Okay,
can.
so what we were supposed to be talking about tonight, just wanted to touch on it for just a minute, the procedures for going after government officials' bonds. So
Now, see, one of the things that you want to do is stop calling them the, which is a positive participle. That's like saying my mother. This is why language, we've got to work out these things. Stop calling them your government. They are a private kingship oligarchy that was set up in 1861, solidified with the Act of Congress, February the 2nd, 1871, called the Organic Act of Congress, to enforce the Spanish Inquisition operations. When you see them tags out there in this parking lot with them 3 stars and 2 bars, that is the family crest for George Washington, who converted all of our estates into the states. Your issue of first suit, and this is back to Brother Mason, is proper person. Now, point in fact, and this is redundant for some of you, but I'm making connections. The Constitution for the United States is not the Constitution of the United States. Are we clear? The Constitution of the United States is a cover-up that was set up to start promoting the private corporation that Lincoln bankrupted in 1860 as the country, which is what has most of our people who like to call themselves people of color confused about what government is and is not. Anyone doing business at Morocco, i.e. the Republic, United States, etc., as set forth under constitutional agreements and treaties, etc., must have what is known as a surety bond as a protection for the nationals and citizens when they breach their fiduciary claim of duty. Are we clear? Now you want to look at the commissioner of the currency, you want to look at the commissioners local, etc. You want to look at the Secretary of State, etc. Although it should be public knowledge, it is suppressed deliberately because they don't want you to go after their bonds. Are we clear? Understanding that they're really not government, they're actually private Roman soldiers. As an example, the policemen out there that keep profiling our people are not law officers. They are private contractors with the United States Service Corporation registered in France to dismember and to dishevel and to disengage the Aboriginal people from their lands and their families. This is where the real so-called police brutality, which is a misrepresentation, is actually domestic terrorism, where the so-called policemen, which are from the gangs of New York in contract to the United States Service Corporation under the secret treaty of Verona to attack our people under the guise of being law. Are we clear? As an example, you want to start going after their bonds, which as soon as you start asking for their surety bonds, who their carrier is, and what corporate state that the carrier is doing business, you're going to find resistance. Are we clear? However, with all of your interchanges, what you're supposed to be doing, like we keep trying to tell you forever, is organize and start sharing data on those who expose it and those who keep resisting. And start keeping a database, which means in all of your territories where you operate, you should know the names and the positions of anybody who claims to be government and whether or not publicly they've exposed their surety bonds. Or whether they have, and then many of the corporate operatives use what is called a cover bond. As an example, say in some of these municipalities where the individual beings by right of law must have a surety bond. They will do a cover bond and cover a whole bevy of people. Sort of like Torian gets insurance on his car, and then we all come under his insurance policy, and we ain't paying. But yeah, everybody else outside of us, as individual people, have to pay the insurance. That's corruption. That's what they do with cover bonds. Are we clear? When you start getting into that area, that's what you want to go after. Are we clear? And you want to go after them in their private capacity and their alleged, not their official capacity, because they're not officials. They're perpetrating a fraud on the masses. None of them are lawful officers. The real republic are you sitting there in them seats who didn't know you're the republic. But you haven't been acting like it, so they're operating from the perspective that you've abandoned your birthright position. Are we clear? Our people don't know the treaty and the Constitution and don't operate on these simple fiduciary agreements, and therefore are abandoning their right, unalienable and inalienable, of protections of their estates and their persons.
Okay, I have to go, but if you were following Taj and you want to hear the end of his lecture, hop on to Facebook under more. Just 3 more, MOOR, 3 times, and you will get the live stream. There's another live stream currently going, but I have to go. All right, thank you for tuning in. Take care, peace.